Hello, everybody. Drasco here from 10knorm.com, where my main focus is to help guide heart-centered entrepreneurs under 10K months to transcend all of the blind spots that are keeping them from thinking, feeling, acting, and authentically marketing so they can normalize their version of 10K months. And on today's episode, we have a Real Talk segment where I bring in a heart-centered entrepreneur on their way towards their 10K norm. And we have some real talk about what's currently their biggest challenge towards building their 10K norm. And in that, we're going to explore who they are, why they do what they do. And then live on the call, I get to help them get out their own way on a challenge that they're currently experiencing towards their 10K norm. And for today's guest, we have Melissa Moon, who is the owner of a brick and mortar studio called ELAN Healing Studio. Or Moon Healing Studios, my apologies. She's an ELAN Healing Facilitator, and ELAN stands for Extraordinary Living Advanced Neurology, which I'm excited to dive into and exactly see what that's all about. But what she specializes is in helping revitalize and transform people's lives by improving their body with ease so they can have the vital energies they need to be healthier than they've ever been and become the person that they've always wanted to be, which is exactly aligned with what we do here. So I'm very excited to dive into all of that. So Melissa, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. I'm happy it's Friday and looking forward to talking to you and having this really great conversation because, as an entrepreneur and trying to do many things, sometimes we have blind spots and it's nice to have those, pointed out.
Yeah, it's nicer, especially when you're not on the receiving end. Usually on the receiving end, it's sometimes not as fun. So what better thing to do on a Friday than dive right into those, right? So I appreciate
Absolutely.
you being here. So what I'd like to start off with is, I had a bit of that intro like provided by you for the show notes and things like that. I have a very basic idea of what you do and, what your studio is all about, but why don't you explain to everybody exactly how you would put in your own words and describe what it is that you do.
Yeah. So I'm an ELAN Healing Facilitator and Wellness Coach. And like you said, ELAN stands for Extraordinary Living Advanced Neurology. And these things go hand in hand. I've been in my own personal care with this work since 2012. So I've seen my own growth. And so I know what is possible for others with wanting to move forward in their life. So first and foremost, what I'm helping people do is personal growth and personal development. And so we do that through neurologically retraining the nervous system out of old patterns by use of what we call is high touch, low force. So whenever we make light touches on the spine, the skin overlying the spine and the neck and down in the sacrum and coccyx area, we're cueing the nervous system to spontaneously reorganize. And through that perception, the perception and sensation allows for us coming back to our body. Our body, our nervous system is the interface between our environment and what we perceive that is to be true. And so, yeah, I help people who are ready to revitalize and transform there's life. That's usually a big conversation like, my body, I don't feel comfortable in it. I don't feel comfortable in my life. There's a tipping point. There's a level of health and wellness and healing that I want to dive into. And I don't know how to do that. That's a lot of what comes to me. And I'm merely allowing people to be reconnected, finding it with ease so that we can develop new skills. We can relearn, we can retrain, and we can reconnect within our neurology. So we're not doing the same old patterns that were there because of a defended moment in life. And so, we can learn to be safe and also not to be stuck in our past, be present in our future, be present at the moment, and be able to change how we receive the future and how we perceive it and how we react.
I love it because there's so much like different branches of what we can go into with regards to that. So I guess, okay, what's coming to me and what I would want to throw your way, just also for my own understanding, because I've actually never heard of this particular modality, but while you were explaining it to me, I'm relating it back to other modalities that I've had like personal experience with. So what I'm curious about is just kind of throw those your way, and you can let me know, how are they similar, how are they not similar?
Mhm.
Because what I've heard from you is like I've had similar experiences with regards to it was EMDR therapy, where it's like you're following the eyes, and I've had that done in the context of like an actual therapist, and that was quite helpful with regards to lowering my anxiousness for a lot of different things. It reminded me of tapping as well, like because you have that physical connection with regards to like the somatic cooling, I guess, of the nervous system. So before I dive into kind of my reasoning for it, I'd love to hear what um, what your comparison to those is actually.
Right. So somatic awareness. So you're talking about the tapping, and I'm not so familiar with the first tech modality that you mentioned. Like I've heard of it, but I've not experienced it or like witnessed it. But the tapping I've done on my own, and I have a really good friend who does that as well. And yeah, that's another form of somatic awareness of um, bringing things back to the nervous system, right? Because there's so much externally outside of us. There's so much that we're going to sit and process in our head. But if we don't have anywhere to anchor within ourselves, if there's no like perceived sensation that has emotion with it, like there's a lack of processing. So with that high touch work, we're allowing someone to perceive their body through like an inward touch experience on top of the outward touch that I bring into them. And through that, people start to just feel more connected in ease. And then our body wisdom starts to turn on. And then people are learning how to become space and like hold space and be open to like higher vibrations and frequencies of love and compassion, like first for themselves. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's like a big package to unwrap, but there's definitely like the science and the science of light touch and the neurology. There's the etheric aspect of the energetics. And then there's just like the pure consciousness of like, well, what does it feel like to breathe in my body in this one little spot? And can I do it? Can I find myself? Is there availability? So we become this like inner explorer within our own body and starting to understand what that even means.
I love it. I have so many questions because, so okay, I guess I'll give you the context for my questions. And honestly, this is going to be turning into a bit of a selfish thing because this is an area that I love to explore as well. And that's been so key to my own evolution because I was very much disconnected from my body and disconnected from my emotions for a very long time. Like the best way I could describe it was, at best I would be looking at them through glass, right? Like I could identify, oh, hey, like there's anger, there's depression, there's anxiety. I would actually disassociate from my body quite a bit.
Yeah,
And the
very
way
common.
that I tried to solve all problems was using my head. Like that's kind of what worked for a long time. But then at some point you got to realize that you can't outthink your emotions. And that was like a big initial awakening. And then that got me down this road of actually learning not only how to feel, but then also realizing how much of a somatic processor of things I actually am. So in like I've done psychedelic journeys where so much of the journey was literally shaking things out. When I first began processing all of these stuck emotions, gagging and like shaking were became a norm for me. And initially I was like very confused and freaked out with regards to what was going on,
Yeah.
and it became normal.
Okay.
So before I kind of dive deeper into that, I'm just kind of curious what your take is on experiences like that.
Yeah. So my goal as a healing facilitator with this work is that we want people to have a silky smooth ride. Because if so throughout our life we have the timeline, like our biology reflects our biography, right? So we have a timeline 0 to, I'm 37, so 0 to 37. And throughout that first, that linear line, which is kind of like the safety line, we have moments that are up into growth, right? Joyful moments, moments that we're enjoying with others. We feel connected in love. There's, fun and play and compassion and like all these really great high vibrational things that we are processing, right? So there's not any opportunity for it to load in our neurological body. But we also have points of defense, right? You're a kid, you fall off your bike, you really get hurt and you got a parent who's like, you're fine, right? That's a slight issue, but like, you're not being validated in your experience. Or say you're in the middle of a nasty divorce, or the wind is taken out of your sails at high school or in a job interview, right? There's all these things where it's like, oh my gosh, like you stop breathing, your body tenses up. There's like a moment of like, crap, like this doesn't feel good. And then those are out of safety, right? So we're in moments of defense. And so I just call them trauma pockets, right? We don't know how to deal with it. So our body like just stuffs it away in these trauma pockets. So when we start to get somatically aware and we're able to have enough safety and opportunity to process through them, my goal is to be able to give people that opportunity with permission on their side, safety in a gentle way of starting to connect into the ease. And as we connect into the ease, we bump into these somatic experiences that, somatizing is just taking a physical experience and like stuffing it away, and it's or even an emotional experience, and it just kind of gets stuck there until it's ready to be actually like addressed. So for your example of like finding those moments and like the gagging and like the shaking, I would discourage that with people in my office, right? Because it's like, but that's just my modality, right? We want to say like, hey, let's continue to stay focused. We don't want you to go into the defense, right? Because we want you to feel safe enough to process. So in your experience, did you feel safe enough to actually process what that was going on? Like, did you understand what was actually happening? Was there enough safety around it for you to say, okay, I got an opportunity to feel this thing, but then what do I do with it later? So we're trying to set skills neurologically so that as you're out in life, you can start to identify what ease feels like, first of all, and then how that starts to bump into defense. And so that you can just actively allow for it to flow through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does absolutely make sense. And I guess I'll give you my understanding of what happened and how I would have been looking at it up until this conversation. And you can let me know, if that's right or wrong or whatever. So for me, I didn't feel like those moments were actually defensive. I felt like those moments were actually release, and the release ended up happening in those ways. Like what was stored needed to be let out somatically. And the reason I say that, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at it a different way, because my main defenses have always been the numbing kind, the pushing away, the numbing, the repressing, which is why I struggled with depression for so long, with emotional eating. Like all of these kind of like non-drug vices were always where I went to not feel and not process anything, which I think is why it took kind of like a long time to get through a lot of those. And obviously there's still some, but it's an ongoing thing. But for me, that was more of a release. And it's very consistent in the sense that even when I feel myself releasing now, or like I get to a realization, I will always, like oftentimes I will like cough, or sometimes like I just need to like move my body and it just feels better. So I'm curious to know, is that what you would consider processing, or is that something that I'm missing?
No, that totally is considered processing. Yeah, sometimes people just like to get wild on the table, and we want to just hold them responsible for being in a specific part of their body. So if the aftermath ends up coming into play, like, oh, I am feeling safe in my body and I can process this, like the whole goal is that we're just not like ripping defense open so that people are having healing crises, right? So if you don't feel like your life, we just want to make sure your life doesn't like crumble. Like you'll come on the table. I call my sessions entrainments, get an entrainment. And I'm like, please let me know how the weekend goes, and if they come back on Monday and they're like, oh my gosh, everything was just, it felt like everything was destroyed. Like things just did not flow, things were not great. It's those moments where it's like, okay, like it gives me information to be able to be like, maybe we should just pull it back a little bit and go a little slower, right? So it's just these moments of, we want to give people enough tools and safety to actually like process what's going on. And it seems like that you have definitely developed that skill. So when you know that when those like somatic things show up, you have enough information to say like, oh, I know exactly what this is. I know how to work with it, and I know how to help move it through the system. And that's really when it comes down to just creating more subtle body awareness. Not everybody has that experience, right? So most people are numb in certain parts of their body or from the neck down or whatever. So initiating more body-centered safety into more body subtle awareness of what it is that you need is really powerful for an individual.
100%. And I think I don't even want to say it's a long lost art. I just think we're so distracted and focused on other things. It's really always available to us. It's not really lost. Yeah. But yeah, I would agree with you. It does open up a whole other level of awareness and experience. And what I'm curious as well is like, do people, like I know you mentioned early on, like the people you work with, they're there to kind of improve their lives overall. They're not really sure, what's in the way. And then you handle that neurologically. What about for like blockages or, fears or like traumas? Like, is that something that you deal with as well or no?
Absolutely. I mean, I run the gamut when it comes down to what we do. The work is really for everyone. So there's no, like, I love working on littles. My little girls have been in train their whole life. I love working with, like, I just actually worked on a dog today. They're amazing doing train. And just like the gamut of people, right? From all different walks and religions and races and all that stuff, age, all that doesn't matter. And so being able to allow people enough safety around these things is huge. I have plenty of practice members who have ignored their body for years and years and years. And a lot of it has to do with trauma, women in physical trauma, abuse trauma situations, getting out of bad relationships, getting out of like really crappy work situations. And some people I don't see for any of that. Some people are just more curious of like, oh, there's just something happening in my life and I want more purpose, or I'm sitting on a fence and I just don't know what to do. Like, we're creating enough opportunity for stress to drop out of the physiology, allowing for more energy to find clarity of like, oh, there was the direction. Like, we just turned the body wisdom up a little bit, enough for that nudge to be like, oh, that's where I need to go, and giving people the opportunity to do so. And we find it just runs the spectrum. I've seen some people specifically for pain, and they come in and pain changes, like plantar fasciitis, the pain starts to change and the relationship with their body starts to change. But then also maybe they take care of that project that they've been procrastinating on for years and years, and they finally get it done. So there's so many linking things, because we all have trauma. A little trauma goes a long way, makes for a way more interesting life. But then it's also nice to have the skills so we don't have to like store trauma in our body, and it takes away the opportunity for our physical body to work properly, and our emotional and karmic and spiritual body to work properly.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense, because it is that holistic bit. Like, at the end of the day, and I think you mentioned at the beginning, if you have that stored and if your neurology is resisting something, it's going to be very hard to kind of tune into those higher parts of self, because they tend to operate and blossom in fertile ground, which to me, I would say it's like when you're not in fear, when you're not being all locked up. So 100%, that makes sense to me. And one of the things that you also mentioned was you help people kind of shift in a gentle way towards that state. So what would you say in the instance where somebody has like so say, and we're talking personally, right? Like my personal bit, even neurology wise, is like a shutdown response, even
Mhm.
to things that are seemingly very natural. So, for context, one of the things that came about through this work is like a lot of my intimacy issues as far as like sex or anything like that was always the shutdown response, or oftentimes was a shutdown response with a partner where like I couldn't get myself aroused, even though that's like, especially for guys, there's this like narrative that it's like natural. But as I got into the work, like I realized, well, neurologically there's like a fear response and everything just shuts down.
Right.
So for instances like that where there's like if everything was left alone, naturally it would work in an X way. How do you get somebody to move back into that natural alignment and basically like heal and reset back to baseline?
Yeah, I mean, simply by in training really is getting consistent and dedicated to the fact that like, hey, I got shit to heal through and I'm going to do that. Coming and getting on the table, it's like flexing a muscle. You have to practice at it. I mean, try going to yoga, one time a month versus 3 times a week. Right? So neurologically, it's the same thing. Like we're just working out on the table. I'm personally not doing anything. I show up in presence, unconditional love, gratitude, and certainty in what I'm doing. I'm not going to heal you. You're self-healing. You have the superpower to self-heal, to create the reality that you want. So what are you focusing on? If you're going to be focusing on all the negative stuff, you're going to get more of that. If you're going to focus on the pain, you're going to get more of that. If you're going to focus on the good stuff, you're going to get more of that. If you're going to focus on the ease, you're going to get more of that. And thank God, I think ease is a lot more powerful when we finally have a point in our life that we can reference that. Like, I know where there's ease in my body. And so in those moments that I can make a different decision, I'm able to do that because I can access my ease, take a hot second and just like settle in and be like, okay, what is it that I need? How is it that I can react? And I'm not great at it every single time. I mean, I have small children at home. We do our best, but I have a different relationship with myself because I can make a different decision in the moment, and I'm better off because of it. Or at least learn in the moment, like, oh, I did react like this. Why? Right? And it's not like, oh, why me? It's like, okay, what's going on, Melissa? What is it about this thing? What is it about this symptom that's showing up that's telling you something a little bit more profound?
Got it. So it's kind of like that whole, what you focus on expands. So in this instance, if it feels good, you want to go more often that direction. And ultimately, even again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but even as your knowledge is concerned, it's the repetition that ultimately creates what the default ends up being. So if you
Oh,
want
yeah.
a new default, keep repeating the thing that you want more often.
I mean, think about the 5-year commute to your job. And it's like you're in the car and you're doing the same commute over and over and over, 10 times a week, back there, to there, and from there. And, you probably get to a point where it's like you're in your car, you're doing your thing, listening to your podcast or your music, and then you're just at work. Like there's like a gap in time. Subconsciously, you know how to drive, you know how to get to work, you know where all the stoplights are, you probably know what the traffic's going to be like. Like so subconsciously, our subconscious is so vast in regards to the amount of information that's absorbed into us. We take in 100%, but we only really are allowed to see about 25%. So there's a lot that's happening in front of us and there's a lot that's happening in the background. And so, yeah, so neurologically, if you're not flexing that muscle, if you're not actively working with it on a consistent basis, your skill set will always be there, but like the habit can start to fall off a bit. Like I know how to run and I know how to run long distances, but if I stop for 3 months, I have to work back up to it. I can't just go out and run another like half marathon, at least not comfortably.
Got it. Yeah, like the baseline is set by what you repeatedly do.
Yeah.
So if you want to maintain it, then that's what you repeatedly do. So yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah. And our bodies, like, we have lots of layers as humans, right? And you think, like, if you work through one thing, don't think that you're not going to work through it again at some point on a different layer.
100%. I wish it was a switch, but it never actually is.
For real, I get those moments where I'm like, can't I just be done with this? And it's just like, no, you don't get to be done with this. You get to work through it again and again and learn more and more and more, which is fascinating and exciting as being a human. Like, we get to feel things. Like, celebrate that we get to feel things. And it's just like, well, what are we going to do with those feelings? We're going to use them to drive action.
100%. The best way to get a better action is to feel better about doing the better action. So yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, I mean, on that note, because you do have this wealth of knowledge and experience, and clearly can go quite deep with regards to how you help your clients, what I'm then curious about is, given where you're at and the skill sets that you have and the people that you help and the results that you get, what do you feel like is your biggest challenge as far as creating your 10K norm?
Oh my gosh, my own personal mindset. I mean, talk about trauma in childhood. I didn't feel accepted by my peers. And so through that, like, I spent a lot of time with the lunch lady because I never felt welcomed on the playground. And so one of the big things that I've personally been bumping into is that specific feeling of like, no one wants to play with me. Like, I have to work extra hard. Like, I have to extend myself out to a greater degree to like be incorporated into the playground, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I gotta kind of willfully go forward so that I can be accepted into the circle. Like, would that be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been working on mindset and that sort of thing because, like, yeah, it's been showing up a lot louder, even though, I mean, it's not necessarily like completely, obviously it's not completely true. There are just situations that show up, and then I feel like I'm bumping into it where I'm like, oh my God, like, it's, people do want to play with me, and they do show up and that sort of thing. But yeah, I feel like it is a bit of a block.
Got it. So obviously you're very like self-aware. You have a lot of work that you've done on yourself already. You have the observation that there is this thing that keeps popping up. So if you were to get more specific, like, how is that keeping you from your 10K norm?
I think letting it override my positive, like my positive talk to myself. Like, I'll get really down and like hard on myself, because being an entrepreneur is kind of a lonely game to an extent, right? It's just like, it becomes more and more apparent of wanting and needing to like reach out for community. Yeah, and the community that I'm in, like, people know about me. There's like, I know there's chatter out in the ethers, and I know there's all that kind of stuff going on, but it just feels lonely.
Okay, so it feels lonely to be in this entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
And because of that, it seems like you get caught up in these doom loops, right? Like, am I getting acceptance of, reliving that childhood? Nobody kind of understands me right now. Like, is that kind like accurate?
Yeah, especially with like some of my personal relationships. And maybe it's just I'm shifting and changing and growing, so I really want to take responsibility for how I'm showing up. But then also be really mindful of like, and also like, these interactions are like instigating these feelings as well. And then there's a part of me who's just like, oh, just stop it, just suck it up, like, you're being silly. And then it's kind of like, I struggle with that, because it's also at the same time like, I'm not being silly, because they are real feelings that had come from somewhere.
So what would be an example of that, to just kind of get more specific?
like not feeling part of a group, if, to get as specific and not as specific as possible, not feeling included in a group of people that I have felt more connected with in the past. So just like feeling higher amounts of like disconnection from them, and like things are happening socially and I don't feel like I'm being included.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would that happen if you were making 10K months, or would it not?
Oh, good point. Good question. I think that I don't think that would actually like influence at all in regards for how much money I'm making.
So even if you were making 50K a month, would that change anything as far as that piece is concerned, the social piece?
Yeah. Whew. I think I feel like I wouldn't be like, not that I'm spinning my wheels. Yeah, there's a lot wrapped around that. I feel like if I was making 50K months, I would be like, my goal is to hire a wellness coordinator so that a lot of the load is taken off of me. Because at this point, yeah, I think socially I would open up a bit because I wouldn't be putting so much on my plate. Like right now, I am the plate. So there's a lot of like working parts. So I'm busy working, doing all kinds of things. And so like one of my things financially is if I'm hitting these bigger months, then yeah, then I would have someone that I could give all the menial tasks to, which would free me up to be more playful and more social and really enjoy more of my downtime.
Okay, so great answer, but also a great non-answer. And the reason I say that was, so the question was essentially, if you were making 50K months, would that change your stance on the social situation? And you didn't really give a yes or a no.
Got it.
It was kind of an elaborate thing of, well, I would hire and I would do this, and I went
Okay.
into my business plan, right? So how does that
Yeah.
look for you?
Yes, I think socially it would change socially, and I think it would take a lot of stress off of me to want to be out, go out and be social. Because a lot of times, like even the things I am invited out to, I'm really tired by the end of the day, and it's just like I just want to like go home.
Got it. So I'm really tired by the end of the day. So I want to go home and rest, right? So I want to
Yeah.
give my body what it's actually asking for.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm not making my 10K norm because socially I feel like I'm not actually being accepted into a group. Yet if I were to make 50K, then the only difference would be I would actually have time and space for myself to go and get the social group that I thought I needed to get the 10K. So
Yeah.
how's all of that land for you?
Ah, well, it makes me think like the social thing is like not the issue.
I would agree, kind of from the outside looking in, which is good because it's exactly how these things tend to manifest. So we started this conversation with, you know, what is the biggest challenge that you feel like you have towards your 10K norm?
Yeah.
Initial answer was, well, there's this mindset piece about not being accepted by my peers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then I followed that up with, well, essentially, how would making 10K months, like, would that help or hinder it? And then we went into this kind of self contradicting story about the money, time, and what that means socially.
Yeah.
So when you hear that reflected back to you, does anything come up?
Not being good enough.
Okay, so for which part?
Like not being good enough to make the 10K, not being good enough to be part of the social thing, not being a good enough like healing facilitator to really make this business like as big as I want it. So yes, I think what shows up for me is like that whole idea of like not feeling good enough to like I think I do a good enough job, and then it's like I guess I didn't. And being like part of myself in that regards.
Got it. So the string that ties them all together is I'm not good enough to be part of the social circles that I want to be part of. I'm not good enough to even make the 10K. Because I'm not making a 10K, I doubt whether I'm even a good practitioner, a good craftsperson, a good healer at what it is that I actually do. So is that accurate?
Yeah, that feels a lot more accurate.
Okay, good. So then that goes back to what you said before, as far as there's the doom loops that override the seemingly positive thoughts that I want to have. It seems like the I'm not good enough is at the root of those as well. Would that be accurate as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you had to narrow it down to, let's just say, just the 10K months, because I'm not good enough pops up all the time and it is a common one, and I appreciate your vulnerability with it. What would you say to sum it up as far as its relation to the 10K months?
That it's like I'm like almost like I'm worthy to receive, but to not keep it. Because I've had a close 10K month. I've had a $9,200 month, which was like amazing. And then there was the feeling of like, oh my God, okay, well, we've opened up this gate. This is available. Like we made this happen, energetically made this happen. And I guess it's like kind of scary to think that like, am I good enough to do it again? And then like getting in my head. And then the next month was a little bit less than that. I mean, still 7,900. So like, yeah, a great month. And then this last month after that was a little less, with kind of a weird hiccup in it. And it was just kind of like, am I good enough? Like, this sucks. Like I got it. And then all of a sudden it's just like, it starts to be taken back away. So one of the things I've been really trying to focus on is like, I'm worthy of receiving and keeping it.
Got it. Okay. So I'm worthy to receive it, but not keep it. So does
Right.
that feel true for you?
Yeah, because I've seen this fluctuation in my life. It's like it shows up and then all of a sudden like it's taken away. So it's definitely like a pattern of a feeling.
And has it shown up in other areas as well, or before, or only right now?
Yeah, definitely in other aspects of my life.
Got it. Okay. So in terms of the 10K norm,
Mm-hmm.
because I have it written down right now, it's like I'm worthy to receive it, but not to keep it. Would you reword it a different way, or that way feels true for you?
No, I feel like that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So are you okay to work through and kind of see where that thought takes us and kind of work to reverse it? Are you okay with that?
Do it.
Okay. So I'm worthy to receive it, but not to keep it. So fundamentally, if you look at all instances at all times, is that objectively true?
No.
Okay, perfect. And how do you react then when you think that thought?
I want to get really distracted to not I want to distract myself into other things to not think about it.
Okay, like what?
Like go super hard the other way and like positive affirmations, but probably in a way that like strangles it.
So like what will be an example of that?
Um like that feeling comes up, and so then I use it as fuel to be like, okay, well, I don't exactly know what to do, but I'll do what I know how to do, right? And that's like posting something else or getting on Facebook or whatever, like creating action, really. Creating action that I think is going to be like, okay, well, these are just like the things that I should do without, so it's like forced action versus just like taking it in, relaxing for a second, and then just being like, okay, like let's take inspired action instead, which is just something that I've been really like practicing and focusing on, especially in the last couple of months. It was just like, how can I just like relax into it? And, you know, old patterns, like we're still working through old patterns of like deep-seated stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
So anything else as far as what you would do when you think the thought, I'm worthy to receive but not keep it?
No, yeah, I think I just like try to overcompensate on the other end. Or be like, or like show it like, this isn't true. Like I'm gonna show it, but it doesn't feel like I actually like accomplish anything different.
So would you say it's kind of like I'm trying to prove something?
Yeah, like when I was younger, I wanted to be, I don't know, do some type of an outdoor like work activity. And I remember my dad saying like, you can't do that. You won't make any money at it. You know, it's like, just takes like the invalidation, the wind out of my sails kind of thing. And it was just like, well, I'm going to show you, you know, but yeah, I mean, that's probably like one instance as a kid, like that feeling of like, I want this, but it's like, well, you can't have it because it wouldn't do this, this, and this for you.
Got it. So it's like I want to show that this person is wrong more so than do it because my genuine desire is to make this happen and to have this experience. Like, would that be accurate?
Some of it, yeah.
Okay. How would you refine it?
In regards to how I reacted to it.
Correct.
Okay. I would refine it by, what comes up for me is like, just like graciously accepting someone else's perspective and just being like, yeah, but I know it's true for me. So I actually don't need to prove it to you because it's going to happen and I don't need to worry about what anybody else honestly thinks.
Got it. So if you couldn't think that thought, right? Like you're in the situation and you can magically block yourself from thinking the thought, I'm worthy to receive it, but not keep it. Who would you be?
I would just be embodying more of like my authentic self and knowing that I've created things in my life that have been non-negotiable. Like I've had children and raised them exactly how I've wanted them, how I've always envisioned it. So it's like it I the refinement would be is like it's a non-negotiable. I'm making $10,000 months. I'm making $30,000 months. Like there's going to be nothing that nobody says or can do to ever take that power away from me.
Got it. So there's an empowerment sense of like, if I couldn't think this thought, I would be in my own full power.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Got it. So right now, when I think this thought and when it loops or versions of it loop, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not worthy to receive, I am worthy to receive it, but not keep it. What I end up doing is I just distract myself. So probably do things the opposite of what actually got me the initial high months. And oftentimes I try to then overcompensate. It almost sounds like a fear response of I just get scared. So then, okay, push the positive affirmations, like whatever action I can do, just do it. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm not even in a state to do inspired action. I'm just doing it because that's what I should be doing.
Yeah.
In many ways, probably distracting from the fear and the negativity associated with that thought. So it's better to kind of distract than feel. And in that, when I think it, or even as an offshoot of it, there's the proving energy, right? I'm going to prove this wrong. I can do this. So would that be accurate as far as like summing up? This is how I react when I think the thought.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't think that thought, like the real you, the more deeper fundamental you, doesn't need to worry about other people's expectations or opinions of your reality, right? Because you already raised the kids the way that you wanted to raise them and clearly gone through your different transformations. You showing up authentically, the 10K months would be non-negotiable. And all in all, instead of coming at it from the fear, there would be an empowered response to it. So like, is that accurate overall?
Yeah, I definitely would just feel like I'd be showing up with more like personal power and inner strength.
Got it. So if you were to take that original thought, I'm worthy to receive, but not keep it, and basically use it as a reflection. So to turn it around and see what does it reveal about me. Oftentimes we would look at kind of the opposite or replace I am statement, myself, me, with my thinking. If you had to reword the statement in that regard, what would it be?
To make it into like a positive.
Yeah, kind of it's opposite.
Right. Okay. Opposite. Yeah. Hello. I mean, it could be as simple as I am worthy to receive and I deserve to keep it.
And does that feel as true or truer than the original?
It feels true.
It feels true.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there any other ones that come to mind?
Money is easy, life is easy, business is easy.
Okay, which is a different thought. Like it's a different
Right.
affirmation. So in terms of the turning around the original thought, is there anything that comes to mind in addition to the original one, which was, so I'm worthy to receive and to keep it. I think that's what you just mentioned.
Yeah, I'm worthy to receive and I deserve to keep it.
And I deserve to keep it, yeah.
You know, I deserve an abundant life comes up for me.
Okay.
Hmm.
And as far as turning around the original statement, right? Because the one that keeps your attachment to the I'm worthy to receive but not keep it,
Yeah.
that's the one that spirals you into it.
Right.
So I'm all for the additional positive affirmations that reinforce a new thought. But what we want to see is there a deeper truth around the original thought that's more reflective of who it is you actually are, the more empowered version of yourself? So one of them is I'm worthy to receive and I deserve to keep it. Is there something else that's truer? And if not, that's cool too.
Receiving, receiving abundance and keeping it is my divine right.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, like the whole idea of like what's divinely meant. Like receiving and keeping what is like what's divinely meant for me will always be there.
And do those two, so that one and the previous ones, I'm worthy to receive and keeping it is my divine right.
Mm-hmm.
Does that feel as true or truer than the original statement?
Truer.
Truer. Perfect. Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that feels good.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And one other one to potentially play around with to just kind of see how this is showing up in your own life.
Yeah.
It's I'm worthy to receive, but my thoughts don't like keeping it.
Okay. Yeah.
How does that one land for you?
Yeah, that one lands pretty hard.
In what way?
Because it's like it's getting caught up in my head even though my body is saying something different.
And would you say that one is as true or truer than the original?
That's true.
It's true as well. So if you look at the statements that kind of more lit you up or that also felt true, right? So I'm worthy to receive and keeping is my divine right is as true for you as I'm worthy to receive, but my thoughts don't like keeping it.
Yeah.
Right. So you see how now, as far as like those doom loops are concerned,
Right.
the you in question, the empowered you, the one that's authentic, that's the one that knows divinely you can keep it. But it is your attachment to all of the surrounding thoughts. So as soon as like your attachment to that loops into, well, I haven't done enough mindset work. I actually, still haven't gotten into the social groups that I want, which now reminds me of, my childhood stuff. And I've had all these months, but then I should be distracted with it. Like that tangent that goes on for as long as you want it to go on, that's your thoughts. Just different versions of your thoughts about not keeping it.
Right.
The you that you know is you is actually totally cool with it. So how does all of that land for you?
That super lands for me. Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah. So
yeah. It's really true, because it's that like up and down thing that I'm doing.
Correct. Because as soon as you get to close to that 10K norm, it's like, oh shit, pull back, get distracted, force action, do what I should be doing.
Right.
God forbid I look at what I was doing when I made the 9,200, because that'll just get me closer to what I actually want. But I'm rooted in, I can receive it, I can't keep it. And if I make it again, I will likely keep it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see how that narrative gets you into the doom loop of freaking out.
Absolutely. And I was reflecting back on April this morning, and just like how much more I just feel like I was way more relaxed that month. And then all of a sudden these things like showed up, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like really unexpected. But I was able just to I just felt like that whole month was just like, like shoulders relaxed, felt like I was like hanging out on a bed, just like receiving.
When you had your high month, or right
Yeah.
before you had the high month? Okay, so your high month, you're relaxing and receiving.
Yeah.
And then afterwards?
Afterwards, I was just like, oh, I got, it felt like I had to work to, I had more work to do. And so then it seems like then, yeah, just kind of like tightening up a little bit, like I have work to do now. And like, now I have an expectation and da 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 da. And I end up, I think, kind of constricting it in a way.
Right. So when I'm actually receiving close to the 10K norm, I'm cool. But soon afterwards, I start to freak out and I have to do something.
Yeah.
Right. So it seems like the pattern is now being put together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how does all of that land for you?
I just need to relax. I was like, I try my best like with self-care and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just like relaxing and just really trusting. I have trust issues, not to get into another tangent, but trust issues in myself for making good decisions, and really listening to the things that I need and trying not to force them. And so yeah, being able to like settle more and trust more of that, like of that feminine, of that flow, of just that like relax, like think like God's got your back, like we got this, what to do, how to call it in. And then yeah, and then like whatever, something shifts and changes where it's just like, okay, now you got to get back to work. You got to work really hard to make things happen. It's like, ugh, what a like exhausting, mindset or society norm.
Absolutely. And especially if you identify more as like, I prefer, the feminine way of doing business, then obviously doing isn't necessarily going to get you there. It's more about what can I do to nurture an environment that's going to allow those energies to move through. Like I don't necessarily need more structure, but I do need some sort of feedback loop on, am I nurturing the soil to make that happen? And it seems like April is like a month that you did do that. Would that also be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. So in that case, what were things you were doing, in February, March, April, and then what were things you were doing the months afterwards?
Like February, March, April, we're in the midst of like doing a move. My husband was just finishing our house. And so it was like really just settling into these transitions. Like I actually moved my office on May 1st. So there's a lot of stuff. It's not like I was like totally sitting back and relaxing, but maybe I just was a little more distracted with like like two different moves coming up, where it was just like I was just kind of relaxing into like, okay, the business is just going to work as the business is going to work. Like I have two big transitions happening, and so it was kind of this buildup of maybe not being so hyper focused on like the business part, but like being focused on a few other things. So I was able to like kind of relax around it. And it was like, hey, it's going to happen. Like things are just going to happen as they happen. I'm not going to worry too much about anything, because I got to make sure that like I can move, I can paint my walls in my new studio. Like I got to do this, and this, like other things outside of like the other, like the business systems. Once I moved in those months after, is just like, okay, now we're all moved, all those transitions are done. Now I'm like refocused. And like, now I got to be like focused on this.
And that happened post-April, the focusing.
Yeah.
Okay. So funny enough, when you actually started actively thinking about it,
Yeah.
actively focusing on it, that's when things didn't go the way that you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting.
That is quite interesting. So yeah, I mean, that I think is the topic of another potential episode in and of itself, because that,
yeah, absolutely.
you know, you can't also get into the tactical aspects. And one of the things that I often talk about in 10K Norm is you have things like we just went through with regards to like there's the emotional management, the thought management around what is creating the results that you do or don't want in your life,
Yeah.
right? We can get those out of the way. And sometimes I think, you know, as heart-centered entrepreneurs, we spend too much time diving into the mindset and like, you know, I'm not healed enough. But the reality is maybe you are healed enough, but actually just aren't nurturing what's right in front of you, which kind of sounds like what's been going on in your instance, right? So now the next step is the stabilizing, right? It's now, how do I take what I know, manage it day to day while applying the things that I need to actually stabilize this, and then work through all of the, you know, crap that comes up when I start to freak out because it is coming in, it is getting close, etc.
Right.
That is a different baseline game. So does that, like, how does that land for you?
Yeah, I think it's just managing and like keeping perspective on like on what's actually happening. Because what's actually happening is like really good stuff is happening here, and like people are having transformation, and you know, quality of life surveys are showing people will increase their mental health by 200%, and they're becoming more aware of how they react during, you know, shitty situations, and they can make a choice and be different. Like there's so much good happening. And yeah, it's like, where is, you know, it's like what I teach here, are we focusing on the ease, or are we focusing on not the ease? Yeah. So what are we gonna get more of as we focus on what we're focusing on?
100%. I totally agree. And it's oftentimes the case of, you know, we have to take our own advice as far as practitioners. So I totally get it. So does that feel complete for you as far as today?
Yeah, I really feel like I have some like greater insight in regards to just putting words to that pattern and seeing that pattern a little bit differently.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for showing that to everybody, because certainly I'm Not Enough shows its head in every way, in every form, to everybody. So I know that was super helpful. So just to kind of wrap things up then, where can people find you and your work, and who is it that you work with? Floor is yours for all that good stuff.
Awesome. So I am Moon Healing Studio here in Auburn, California, up in the northern part in the Sierra foothills. If you've never been here, this place is amazing. So come visit. And I am on Instagram at mlmoon_studio, Facebook, ML Moon Studio, and my website is www.mlmoonstudio.com.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to have all those pieces in the show notes. So Melissa, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll see everybody in the next one.